Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
In favor, Ellen, or should we do? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Congratulations, Commissioner Deal.
Thank you. And then also we need to nominate a vice chair. So if there's any nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate our other Ben Bramer, as vice chair.
I second it.
All right. All those in favor? Oh, I should ask Ben, would you like to be vice chair?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, hearing none. Ben Bramer will be the vice chair.
Congratulations, Vice Chair Bramer.
And then I'd also like to thank the commissioners or the council members in the audience, Marjorie Rollins and Stuart Gilchrist. I know you guys have both been working really hard on the general plan too, so Stuart's been pushing for this for, I think, a number of years, and we're going to have that presentation later today, so we really appreciate it. All right, and then next we'll move on to the appointment of the Architectural Review Board. 3 members shall be, I don't remember last year's numbers. You were one of them? You were one of them? Are you, so we just need to nominate 3 more or have volunteers basically. Do you guys volunteer to do it again or be interested?
I basically will no longer be on the Planning Commission moving forward, moving out of the city limits, so I'm not eligible.
Okay.
I just have a question of process. Is there the ability, I don't know Mr. Mahler's timing to come on to the Planning Commission, but is the ability to bring him on before and then have him have an interest?
Yeah.
In fairness to all who are going to be on this, because he's going to be on this commission, I presume, for the term that he's appointed, and this is a unique opportunity to serve on the Architectural Review Board.
So Mr. Mahler will be, sorry, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mahler will be appointed on the 4th of February. Yeah.
And I actually probably skipped a step. I wanted to actually introduce the new commissioners and Valerie Sutton. Would you like to introduce yourself and kind of?
I'm Valerie Sutton. This is my first meeting. I want to thank Margie Rollins for appointing me. I'm very excited on serving.
Welcome. And Mr. Mahler?
I'm Mike.
Great. And then I'd assume, and I don't know the answer exactly, but since he will be appointed at some point,
My thing, Mr. Chairman, I would say yes, and then we could say pending the actual appointment on February the 4th, correct? Was it 4th? Yeah, okay. Which is a few days away, really, right, from now. So.
Okay. And I know I spoke, just for reference for the commission, I spoke to Mary, and she was have interest to be on the ARB. Need 3 of us. Are there any volunteers to be on the ARB, which meets irregularly, but it's sometimes short notice on special topics? Volunteer?
I'll volunteer.
Thank you, Ben.
I'm more than happy to if there's no one else who has a strong desire to. I mean that deferentially as an appointee to the Planning Commission and someone who lives in Yuba City. So that and Mary lives in Yuba City too, but we bring different expertises. I do have background in design from my years in city government, but I want to be deferential to the 5 planning commissioners of board.
Well, then I'll volunteer. I'll be the second one, and we need a third. I don't know who we could wait and see. I don't know if you're leaving, so. Or unless.
In the interim basis, I'd be happy to do it.
Great.
Yes. No, sincerely would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have three, Steve Kroger, Ben Deal, and Ben Bramer for the Architectural Review Board. All right, thank you. And then, are there any changes to the agenda we need to be aware of?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. So I'll move on to the consent portion of the agenda and the approval of the minutes for October 23rd, 2024. Are there any changes that the commissioners see or review that they need to address? All right, seeing none. Would anyone like to propose a motion?
Motion to approve.
Excuse me, through the chair, you can actually do all three as one vote.
Okay.
When it's under consent, you just move to approve the consent agenda, the entire consent.
So the meeting calendar as well. Well, let me check. Is there any comments, concerns about any of the three items? The meeting calendar, identifying the fourth Wednesday each month with two established recesses, November 26th and November 24th of 2025. Are there any comments on that portion? Okay. Then also, we need to approve a special meeting for February 12th, 2025, for a public hearing on the General Plan 2050 update and the draft downtown specific plan and the zoning code amendments. Any comments on that date or concerns? All right, seeing none. Ben?
Motion to approve consent calendar.
Second. All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, seeing none. The consent items, all three consent items have been approved. All right, I'm moving right through. See, I'm pretty speedy here. Work number 8, the workshop, and obviously we have some guests here. I know we have a new staff member at our meeting. Would we like to introduce him now, or when would you?
Sure, I can have the honor of that. And actually, this is Mike Lucan, and Mike is joining us as a planning contractor for the city. He's got quite a bit of experience. And Mike, would you like to say a few words and introduce yourself? Welcome to the city.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you, commissioners. Look forward to working with you in the coming years or on different items related to planning. I have worked in the public sector, including land use planning, economic development, redevelopment, and transportation planning for the last 36 years. And so I'm hoping to bring that experience to bear in working for you on the Planning Commission and presenting items to you in the coming months.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to see you. And now I'll move on to item number 8, if that's Kathy's. I see Kathy and Matthew who have been working on the general plan update. So item number 8 is the general plan 2050 update, and again, draft downtown specific plan and zoning code amendments is a public workshop. So.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Kathy Pease. I'm a planning consultant with Management Advisory Services, working with the city for the last 3 years on this project. We were hoping that tonight was going to be the public hearing for you to consider this package of projects, but we got caught up with a new state law. So we had sent out a public hearing notice, typically runs for 10 days, and on January 1st, the state changed that so that zoning amendments require a 20-day notice, and so we didn't have enough time for this, and we thought this was such a huge amount of information, and with new planning commissioners, might as well take advantage of tonight to present this in a workshop fashion. So as you saw on the consent calendar, we will be coming back February 12th, and on that evening we will be asking the commission for a formal recommendation to the city council on all of this. So again, thought it was worth kind of walking through everything again and giving an opportunity for you and the public to ask questions if you have any. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matthew Gherkin, our consultant with AECom. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Kathy. And I also have with me tonight my colleague Chandra Miller, who's an architectural historian. So if you have any very difficult questions that involve architectural history, especially in relation to the proposed historic design standards, you can begin to think about those questions, and she's here to entertain them if you have them. Congratulations, new chair. Congratulations, new vice chair. Welcome to the Planning Commission, new members, and almost welcome to the Planning Commission, new member. I'm here to provide a short presentation on, 2,500 pages of documentation or whatever that we've been developing over the last 4 years. But I think you've been digging in already, so I'm going to keep it short. Please interrupt me along the way with any questions that you have. And I don't have a way to take notes, so if somebody, Chandra or Kathy, you could take notes on things that we should revise, that'd be very helpful to me. Next slide, please. The scope of this effort, as mentioned in your staff report and as Kathy just noted, is the general plan looking out to 2050, a downtown-specific plan that provides regulatory guidance for development within the downtown area, certain updates to the zoning code I'll explain in a minute, new document called Historic Design Standards that replaces a 1996 document, and then finally an environmental document called an EIR, Environmental Impact Report, that looks at the environmental effects of all those things. The purpose of all this documentation, first is to implement direction from decision makers, from this body, from City Council, and from all the different stakeholders and public members that have weighed in to encourage to facilitate investment, to facilitate development, especially in the downtown area, promote vibrancy, economic development, fiscal sustainability, improve bicycle and pedestrian safety, enhance the local quality of life, and functionally, this documentation is a decision-making guide for this Planning Commission, this body, City Council, gives direction to staff on actions to take in the future and provides direction for the city in planning for development, as well as other service providers planning for development. I did not write this by myself in a vacuum at home. We got a lot of input along the way, as is summarized on this slide, from a very active, very loquacious general plan advisory committee who we met with on a number of different occasions, starting from the very beginning on what are the main problems and opportunities for the community all the way through to key policy content. Also met along the way with City Council and Planning Commission, a very engaged Planning Commission, a very engaged City Council actually on planning issues. So on planning issues, so we got a lot of input on policy, on land use, even down to land use designations and zoning that came directly from Council and Planning Commission. Certain bikeways to add, very detailed guidance that is represented before you tonight. We also had community surveys and workshops, including a mailer that went to every single address in Marysville, every single one, and so we got a lot of responses that way, and heard from stakeholders that we interviewed, a number of different stakeholders, agencies, and organizations that we interviewed, and used that input to create the draft documents before you tonight. And here are some of the key findings. None of this will surprise you. A lot of people talked about improving Ellis Lake and the area around Ellis Lake, preserving the historic character, facilitating improvements to dilapidated buildings, make the parks more inviting, promote walkability, improve bicycle and pedestrian safety, manage congestion, implement traffic calming, things like that. I'm not going to read every word on these slides. You'll all know what I'm talking about. You've been here longer than I have. But I did want to mention some of the core goals, really from the very beginning, from when I first started to talk to the city manager and Kathy about this effort, all the way through to the end. Focus on economic development, focus on promoting investment in this city, expand housing options, improve transportation, facilitate public infrastructure and facility improvements that are necessary to support future development and investment in the city. And there's no better champion of that than the Community Development Director, Dan Flores, over here. Some of the key features of the general plan: it provides a land use framework, what's allowed in different properties, transportation improvements, which ones are priority, what's required to serve land use change and development. Open space and recreation content. We have policies about enhancing and actions about enhancing Ellis Lake, making parks more inviting, as I mentioned, making improvements to the levee trails. You've got a very nice system already, and it could be just an absolute regional attraction in the future, connecting to other places like Yuba City in the future. Infrastructure modernization. We also have environmental standards that are not only drawn to protect and improve the environment and public health and safety, but also the way we've structured this is to streamline future development. So future projects don't have to do necessarily their own environmental review. Here are the parts in the general plan, as I've already mentioned before to you all: land use and circulation, open space, noise, and all these different parts, and a glossary so that our nerdy little planning terms, if the public doesn't know what a particular word means, we can just define that in the glossary. I found that to be helpful. Next, please. And then on to the specific plan. You see the purpose up here. Again, it's consistent with the general plan to revitalize and enhance the downtown area, to promote economic development, to promote reinvestment within the downtown area, accelerate development, make it easier, remove regulatory burdens for future development, make the standards clear in advance for interested property owners and developers, expand housing choices, and especially make it more possible in the future through additional housing development for more people in Marysville to be able to get to their job, get to services, get to the park, get to school without having always for everything to depend on their car, and reach destinations on foot, bicycle, via transit even. Here, important bit of context. In 2015, there was an effort called Bounce Back that had a ton of community input and a ton of stakeholder input, and I think was really quite a great and detailed effort. And we stole all those good ideas and put them right into the specific plan so that we could build upon also decision maker input, public input that was reflected in that 2015 Bounce Back vision and implementation plan. Next, please. Yeah, so here are the contents of the downtown specific plan that's in your packet. Kind of similar to the general plan: land use, transportation, open space, and public investments. But also under Chapter 7, an implementation administration section. This is like how the specific plan gets updated, how the procedural stuff, like what kinds of projects within the specific plan are subject to what kind of approval and what the appeal body is, things like that. The reason why we have all those kinds of details in the specific plan is because for the downtown area, the idea is that specific plan is instead of the zoning code. It supplants zoning. Okay, this is the new document before you that I believe has not been before this body previously. The historic design standards. Thank you, Ellen, for replacing this version of the presentation. This says it correctly. Historic design standards. So this replaces a 1996 document that was called Design Review Manual and deals with the same topic, which is projects that affect historical resources or that happen within an official historic district have to abide by the standards that are presented in this document about, what are the character defining features of historical resources and how to preserve those features. While also, and this is important, this explains some of the revisions that we made to the 96 version, is we want to preserve what's important, the character defining features of historical resources, but also we want to encourage investment in Marysville, in the historic district. So we don't want the rules to be so complicated and fuzzy, subject to interpretation, subjective, that they would scare off would-be investors. We want the standards to be clear, and we want them to be reasonable and feasible so that in the context of new development, new investment, the standards will work. We also have before you a partial zoning code update. So what before you right now is zoning code changes that primarily are focused on implementing the recent update to the general plan housing element. So the housing policy came along, it's subject to state approval, and it says the city is committing to make these certain changes to the zoning code in order to remove constraints to housing development. So we have made those changes to the zoning code that are focused on housing. Also, we have made updates to Title 18.94, I think it is, that is called historic preservation. So that's the one area not related to housing, a zoning code update that is before you. Among other things, we've added a public, quasi-public zoning district that didn't exist before. And then finally, on the bottom, you see their next steps. So I wanted to just mention this. We've made updates to the zoning code focused on housing and historic preservation. After the general plan is adopted, I'm assuming it will be adopted, but that's up to City Council. But after the general plan is adopted, our plan is to go back and have a more comprehensive revision to the entire zoning code to implement the general plan. So take a look at the rules for development, setbacks, heights, all the things that zoning talks about. Make sure it's clear, modernize that material, and make it implement the new general plan. We're going to get back to that, Kathy and I, at least that's the plan, after March when Council takes up the general plan. And finally, everyone's favorite book that you have, the Environmental Impact Report. This addresses the impacts of implementing the general plan, the downtown specific plan, zoning, everything that I've talked about. It's required to comply with state law. We need to disclose environmental impacts of all of this and mitigate those impacts where we can. But as I mentioned, it's also designed to be this big, giant, rigorous environmental document for Marysville, but is designed so that we can just keep using that document to entitle other projects. Most of the time you have a general plan environmental document and that's certified and it just kind of goes away, and then every single project has to write its own environmental document subject to public review, public comment, sometimes public controversy. But this is designed to streamline projects that are consistent with the general plan so that in the future maybe projects don't require any environmental documentation at all, could be exempt from further environmental review, or at least they would be streamlined because of the work that we've done here. By way of summary, you can see at the bottom of the slide here, we do have the environmental document gets into bioresources, cultural impacts, any hazardous materials impacts, all the different topics, and we have 4 areas basically here where there are significant impacts. Even though we tried to mitigate, we tried to bring those impacts down, still have significant impacts related to criteria, air pollutant emissions, cultural and tribal cultural resources, greenhouse gas emissions, and both short-term construction noise and long-term operational noise exposure. Those are the areas where we have significant impacts. We put the environmental document out as is required by state law for public review and public comments, and we received a few that you see summarized on this slide. Maybe first and most importantly, the Airport Land Use Commission looked at the general plan and the specific plan relative to the Yuba County Airport and Sutter County Airport and Beale to make sure that our plans here are consistent with their airport land use compatibility plans. And the Airport Land Use Commission actually had a few comments, said this map is actually out of date, use this one instead. Think about this standard and this in your downtown specific plan. Think about a policy addressing this in your general plan. And we went through and we made all of those revisions to be compliant with what the airports would want to see. And we got a letter today from the Airport Land Use Commission saying, good job, you're compliant, you're consistent with the airport land use compatibility planning now. Similarly, we got a note from the State Mining Geology Board to put mineral resource maps right into the general plan itself. Previously, we just had that in the EIR only, so we did that, so they should be happy. And then Caltrans and the Air District had some comments and questions largely revolving around transportation-related impacts, transportation air quality impacts, and we did not make any changes to the specific plan or the general plan in response to Caltrans or the Air District, but we did prepare very lengthy responses that sort of brought their staff along so that they understood the very rigorous policies and standards that we had in our existing documents and why we didn't need to revise anything based on their comments. And if you have any follow-up or clarification on the agency comments, I believe I have committed most of their comments to memory, or at least can speak to them. And if you have any, this is a great opportunity for you to suggest revisions or things we ought to think about before bringing these documents back to you. If you have questions, we're here to address those questions, and I'd like to turn it back over to the chair at this point. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. And thank you, Kathy. We'll open up to the commissioners if they have comments. I can follow along each one of you. How about Commissioner Kroger? You have...
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Matthew, would you like me to one by one ask these questions, or just ask them all and then you can respond to them all? Which is easiest on you?
Pleasure of the chair.
Well, I'm not answering them, so.
Man, I'll just roll it, and you can decide as you go. So, a couple comments I have. Questions and comments. One comment, opportunity for collaboration. It talks about partner with other agencies and nonprofits on development of public facility improvements. So that sparked in my mind the thought that we have some major employers here. Frank M. Booth, we have Adventist Rideout. I won't include Caltrans in that because I think Caltrans is part of their internal processes to be up to speed on these things. But one of my requests, if not of you, then of city staff, would be to make sure that our major employers are aware of anything in the specific plan or general plan that may affect them. Or just to meet with them and tell them nothing's changed in the medical art district, Adventist Rideout, and assure the CEO. I don't think things like this are on their day-to-day radar screen, but they're investing tens of millions of dollars every year in this community, and obviously we want to see them thrive. And I think that's just part of having a good relationship with our economic engine in the community. That's one. The general plan includes 9 different elements. As I recall, there are optional elements. Does this general plan include those optional elements? And if not, why? I'll roll on.
Are you...
Optional elements. Right. We don't have any optional elements.
What are the two? I recall are there 2 optional elements?
Well, anything is optional.
Well, generally speaking, there are common.
If you're outside the San Joaquin Valley Air Basin, then an air quality element is optional. I think Roseville has an air quality element. Economic development element is sometimes
that's a common
an optional element. I think that economic development moves too fast to be addressed, in 2050. So economic development instead is included in every single part of the general plan and the specific plan. Another optional element is often public facilities or something like that. We address public facilities, but in a circulation element largely. What else do you see? Sustainability element sometimes. Different cities have that. Counties have that sometimes. But we don't have any optional element. Because there are what's called disadvantaged communities where socioeconomic and environmental pollution combines to create a disadvantaged community as defined by state law. That exists in Marysville. So for us, the environmental justice element is mandatory, and you see that in the packet before you.
Oh, excellent.
In other places, that's optional. Like Plumas has one. They're not mandated to, but they have an environmental justice element as well.
Good to know. Thank you, especially on the environmental justice piece, because I think that Marysville needs more environmental justice from the external agencies and their effect upon us, and less internally, I think.
We get at that topic, no doubt.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. So I think two more questions. The next one, with regard to the update of the zoning ordinance, which is one of your next steps you described. Oftentimes there are inconsistencies obviously within an adopted land use element of a general plan and existing zoning within a community. Is that going to be part of that effort as well? Is it going to be that comprehensive, address it? Or
yes,
okay.
For sure. That'll be absolutely maybe the top thing that we look out for is inconsistencies between the general plan that will have a probably March 2025 adoption and a zoning code which is Frankensteined from probably 1950s until the recent code updates that are before you right now. So we'll be on the lookout for inconsistencies for sure.
I commend you in that regard because that's really a heavy lift in my experience. It's easy to come up with the land use macro, but when you start getting into your word,
it's not that easy.
Yeah, well, no, it's well, but assuring that zoning aligns with your land use map can be a monster. And finally, and I'm sure some other folks on the board may have this question as well. I'm just intrigued by Caltrans, kind of the more specific. You generalize it here with regard to traffic calming, pedestrian safety, and bike lane feasibility. Speaking frankly, in my recent experience, I didn't think that they were necessarily advocates for those points with regard to the Binney Junction settlement, and I found that my reading of it, the city had to fight for those elements, and I wasn't sure if you're suggesting that they were advocating for them as part of their comments, which would be absolutely fantastic. Yes. I mean, it's fantastic to be able to put it in a future situation, be able to come back and say, these were your suggestions you gave to us that we made sure are in our general plan. That, okay, you made me nothing but happy right now. Thank you, Kathy.
If you're interested in that topic, take another look at the circulation element, which really gets into this dynamic exactly. We are quoting from the California 2050 State Transportation Plan that talks about the state highway system's impact on communities, air quality impacts, et cetera, and their commitment to make changes to the state highway system to make more vibrant places that are less polluting and affect disadvantaged communities less in the future. And we are saying, we agree. We want to work on those things exactly.
Thank you. Chair, those are all of my comments as of now. Thank you.
Just to touch on the last thing said, I would assume. Be putting in bypasses and such.
There's a policy in the circulation element of the general plan that says, I'm paraphrasing, the city supports establishment of a bypass around Marysville to convey through traffic, especially truck through traffic, something to that effect.
Great.
Through the chair, if we, for some reason, we're having a little bit of a mic issue, so if we can only get one person to speak right now, so if you can just remember to turn your mic off, that'd be great. Thank you.
Chair.
Matt, you're fine.
I think Chair Deal has a button pushed over there to where he's I just have a couple clarifications on the historic design standards. For the last few pages on the height of the buildings, so I'm kind of looking at the Hotel Marysville. If we rebuild, put a new building there, and there's some height standards. On page 22, it has a height standard that's crossed out, but then on the following pages, it looks like that they're green, like they have the checked point. Can you explain what the height standards would be? So say if we're replacing Hotel Marysville for a like building on the same height. Is that possible in these new design standards? Yeah, I think it's at 150% of the buildings that are there.
The diagram, so the standard is let's say you're constructing a new building, and it is directly adjacent to what's called a contributing resource to the Marysville Commercial Historic District. So you're next door to an important historic building, and so the height of the new building should respect, the height of that historic resource that's directly next door. And I think you're right. The standard is, Chandra, is it 150% of the height? Yeah. So the I don't know. I guess there is. I believe there is a contributing resource that is across the alley from the Marysville Hotel site, but and so that standard potentially could apply. Maybe I'll turn that into. What I'm hearing is, what I think I'm hearing is, we need to think about what is developed on the Marysville Hotel site in the future. And we don't want to have standards in place now that would unduly limit what kind of building could be there in the future, irrespective of next door historical resources. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, correct. So kind of like a few years down the road, if there's a building that's put on the site, does it come in front of the Planning Commission going, well, this is the size of the building that used to be there, so we're going to replace it with the same size? Or is it a whole, now we're going by the 150%?
Okay, got it. There's nothing in the historic design standards that would apply that would say, whatever burned down, you have to do a building that's just the same height as whatever burned down. There's nothing, correct? There's nothing in the standards that would say that. Chandra's reading the design standards on her phone right now. Perfect. But I think it is, most of this was written but it was all conceived before this happened.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm going to do is take that more as a note to think about future redevelopment of that site and just make sure that we haven't hamstrung ourselves in some way that's going to be problematic in the future.
Yeah, just something to think about. Okay, all right. And then one other thing that I've noticed driving down East Street, the buildings that are across the highway, from the Hotel Marysville, they've been repainted and their windows are painted over. Is painting over windows in accordance with these design standards? Or should they have been kept as is?
I do not believe right now painting windows is among the activities that would come before the Architectural Review Board, even if the building was a contributing resource.
Yeah, but on the standards, there's window and door standards. Yeah. So, but I didn't see where. I'm hoping that it doesn't become consistent throughout the whole thing, where people are just painting windows, just to match the color instead of leaving windows as is.
Yeah, that's a great note. Also.
And then just one other item, kind of looking at the figure numbers, just watch the figure numbers.
In that document?
Yeah.
In the historic design standards?
Yeah. That's it.
Thank you.
Can we ask the commissioner to be, if he has any comments? Or Muller? All right, thank you. And I think I'll just bring up one comment that I did bring up to Matthew was suggestion for the circulation element or the streets element to consider adoption of, in the future, of NACTO guidelines, National Association of City Traffic Officials as a city. So TBD, I thought maybe Mr. Crosby. Yeah, and I would assume that Vincenzo may have been here, but he's not here, so but that was one of the comments. Another comment I just want to bring up is tomorrow is a meeting on municipal water. I noticed we kind of just barely touched on it. We have a municipal water company in town. So just, I hadn't seen much in here on that, so I don't know if it's too late for that, but there's been news about that lately, so.
So a rate increase wouldn't be part of our general plan unless we had a policy on rate increase. So that's typically not something that the general plan would get into. Yeah,
I was thinking of something more along the lines of just discussing if our sphere of influence changes, there's another water utility nearby, effects and impacts. I know sphere of influence was in this quite a bit too, and there hasn't been a lot of discussion about what that means. Do you mind just giving us a quick snippet of, bringing a refresher of?
So a sphere of influence is a planning term. It's established by the local area formation commission. So it's an area that is established to indicate an area that the city is interested in. So it could mean that the city in the future might want to annex, but it's not an assured thing. So it is an area that the city identifies. So in order to go forward with an annexation in the future, if the city wanted to grow, it's quite a process. We'd have to do what's called a municipal services review, and that looks at service providing and who's the best jurisdiction to provide those services. And then we'd want to do economic studies to make sure it pencils out. As you saw in our proposed general plan, it's to the south where there's existing businesses and residents. That makes it more complicated because those residents get to vote on whether they want to annex or not, and we would have to have a certain percentage. And then another component is because it's the county jurisdiction, we would have to go through a tax share negotiation with the county in order for them to agree for us to go forward with annexation. So it's primarily at this point a planning tool to identify whether that makes sense. So the city certainly could broach those studies and get started with that, but it would be a long-term process if they wanted to go forward with that. So with this general plan, again, it's identifying an area of interest, but there's no pending proposal for an annexation at this time. Hopefully that helps define what that is.
Thank you. I have no further comments. I really appreciate the presentation.
Open up for the public.
Yeah, I was just saying, we have public comment period. I know some members of the public. Would you like to speak? All right. Seeing none. All right, we have one. Councilman Gilchrist.
Stuart Gilchrist, City of Marysville, Marysville Council Person. Thank you very much, Matthew and Kathy, for doing an outstanding job bringing this documentation to the Planning Commission. I am relying on you heavily to make absolutely certain that you do the right thing and answer those questions. Very good questions from you about height, density, replacement, etc. You guys are on the right track. Keep it up, and I'm looking forward to seeing this when it comes to us. Thank you very much. And thank you for the extensive public input, which is really very exciting. That we can, really actually brag about this. The public did give us valuable input. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? All right. Thank you for the presentation. I do really appreciate it. I know you guys have been working on this for years, and appreciate all the presentations you've given so far. So,
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Mr. Flores?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to, from the Community Development Department, add my congratulations and thank you for the efforts that both Kathy and Matthew put into this over the last several years. It's definitely been a labor of, I think, love. I'm not sure, but it's been definitely a big project. Met with them on several weekends, talked several nights through the whole process, and it's really they've been very involved in spending time, really valuable time here in Marysville. I remember distinctly when I first met Matthew, when I started here almost 3 years ago, and Kathy as well. They spent the time actually going around the city, getting a flavor of what was going on. They got involved, went out to eat at different restaurants, took pictures of a lot of the architecture within the city. So, and their involvement for me has been stellar through the whole process, and then bringing in as much input as they could from the community. It's just been a really admirable job. I've been involved in a couple of planning, general plan updates in the past for other communities. This one was by far the most involved that I've seen. So it's just a tremendous asset that we've had to have this team helping us work on this project overall. So can we give them a round of applause for getting us to this point? I'd like to do that. Thank you guys. And then I'm going to introduce, I think comments are next. So Mike Lucan has comments from the city. And thank you. And I want to thank you guys too for helping us through the whole process too. You're involved. So thank you.
Yes, we just had a couple of upcoming items that we wanted to bring to your attention tonight. One is we are embarking upon a examination of the whole outdoor dining ordinance. During COVID, the city of Marysville had an interim ordinance in place which allowed for outdoor dining for vertical or for horizontal spacing due to the pandemic. That has since expired, and there's been an interest from our business community in looking at some standardization of allowing outdoor dining. So in that light, we are actually going to be bringing to you, I'll be presenting a workshop for you at the next regular Planning Commission meeting to discuss and just get some ideas going about outdoor dining. Kind of at the same time, we're going to be working with and making a presentation to the Marysville Business Association, and we can let commissioners know of that meeting. So if you wanted to attend and hear the feedback from the business community, you could come to that meeting as well. Another thing that we're going to be working on is the City Council actually initiated a minor revision to our sign ordinance, mainly having to do with procedure and process, but also taking a look at a couple other things. And so we'll be bringing to you at your next meeting a update of that zoning ordinance, sign ordinance, and to get your review and recommendation for that as well. One of the things that the city does every year is it budgets for the Planning Commission to attend what is called the League of California Cities Planning Commissioner Academy. And this year it is being held March 5th to the 7th in Santa Rosa. And so if there's an interest in commissioners in attending that, it is actually a very, very good conference where you can talk to your fellow planning commissioners from throughout the state. And Ellen will be contacting you to see if you want to go and to make arrangements for you to attend that. It is several days, and so will require an overnight stay at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Santa Rosa. But again, it's something we budget for, and it's a very good educational experience if you haven't attended that before. And somewhat related to that is, as an appointed official of the city, you are required to do mandatory ethics and Brown Act training. and it's a bit like watching paint dry, but it's something that is required by the state of California, and so we'll be working with the city attorney and looking at several different methods to do that. Maybe something we can find online, or worst case, we would have the city attorney do that for us. There is, and why I said it was related to the League of California Cities Planning Commissioner Academy, if you wanted to go early, which would be that Wednesday morning, which would require you to actually stay the night before, you can actually take care of the ethics portion of that. They're actually having an ethics training at the Planning Academy, which might be a little more interesting. So that concludes my updates, and if you have any questions, happy to answer those.
Thank you. And one other item, I don't know if it's necessary to say it now, that Form 700, I think, we need to complete those too. So appreciate it, Mike. Welcome aboard.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one more announcement, and that is that we have a commemoration for the Hotel Marysville taking place on Monday at 3 p.m. until 5 p.m. And we'd like to invite definitely the planning commissioners to attend that commemoration. You will recognize Chuck Smith, who will be our historian for the day, who will give us a little background about the hotel and tell us some stories about the past. We also have Tom Galvin, who has a song about the hotel, which he'll be not debuting because he's done it a few times, but he'll be singing the song, and then we'll invite some members of the public to give some of their past history or dealings with the hotel or thoughts about the hotel. So we'd love for all of you to join us that day. It will be a very special day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. No more staff updates, I assume? We're good? Okay. I will go through commissioner comments, and I'll start over here, Mr. Mueller.
Nothing much except to say I look forward to doing this and working with you guys, and it's a really good time to be doing the things that we need to do in Marysville, and I think this is really the place where it all begins, so it's going to be quite a journey. Thank you.
Mueller. Mr. Bramer.
Oh.
Just thank you to staff as always, and thank you to the commission.
Button.
Just want to thank Margie again for everything, and thank you for letting me be on this new board for a year. Thank you.
A pleasure to serve with all of you, first of all, sincerely. And, of course, thank you to the staff who's worked so hard on the general plan and been tenacious on it. And also thank you to the city for putting money aside to make sure that its planning commissioners have the education that they need to make good decisions. Because some cities can be short-sighted in that regard. And you go to these, and they're actually sometimes overwhelming, these conferences, with the amount of information, which gives us a heightened appreciation of staff and their expertise, because they have to apply this every day, and we do it on a periodic basis. So just if you could, Mr. Gilchrist, if you could pass that on, and actually Margie too, to your fellow council members, and appreciation for that commitment to this planning commission. Thank you.
Just to add to that, I went to that in my first year, and without that meeting, it would have been kind of almost lost to be here. So no, it's very good, very educational. So yes, thank you.
I'll make mine kind of brief, but Commissioner Meshner, it sounds like you may not be with us in this meeting much longer, but really appreciate your insight, your input, everything over the time you've been here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I don't know if you're coming back. Not sure if you're on the next meeting or not, but
I think I'm done.
All right. Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And then I want to also say thanks for joining us, Mike Lucan. Appreciate it. Valerie Sutton, I appreciate you joining us. I know it's good work, so he was busy, and Mr. Mahler. I had one other, or actually I had two other items, but one was I did talk to Mr. Flores. I mentioned that it might be good to either have a remote meeting or visit historic things that are on National Historic Register in town. Maybe we go to those after a meeting and just visit if the owners are open to it, or if we just want to walk around the outside of the building. Just to kind of, I know a lot of us will drive by it or seen it, but I thought it might be helpful if we could visit a couple of sites after a couple of meetings this year and just get familiar with it. And then I just want to thank, again, AECOM, council members and ex-commissioner that joined the audience. It's great to see people involved in it. All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Marysville, where roots run deep, McNally Appliances promises to keep the best brands with a smile on its face. We service what we sell, it's a warm embrace. Competitive pricing you can't ignore. With every purchase, you'll love it more. From fridges to washers, all in a line. We install with care to make it shine. Major brands, trusted and true. McNally Appliances is here for you. Oh, McNally, we're your first choice. In Marysville, we help you rejoice. We service what we sell, no need to stress. At McNally Appliances, we're simply the best. Our promise stands, we'll always be here. McNally Appliances, bringing your cheer.
McNally Appliances, 119 D Street, Marysville. McNallyAppliances.com. You've seen signs marking some of the gems in Marysville. They're produced by Sapphire Sign Company, providing something small, large, and mobile. With decades of experience, Sapphire Signs has pioneered local production of a variety of signs, like temporary campaign-style signs, welcomes for unique events, building signage, event promotion, and vehicle customization. Need a sign? Make it a gem from Sapphire Sign Company. On the web at sapphiremarketinggroup.net. Sapphire.
Hi, I'm Neil Goforth of Comfort Keepers of Yuba-Sutter and Nevada counties. Caring for elders or even yourself has challenges. Comfort Keepers of Yuba-Sutter and Nevada counties can help you address today's issues and plan for tomorrow with in-home and specialized care for you or your family members. Call us at 530-749-8800. Comfort Keepers of Yuba-Sutter and Nevada counties.
In Yuba County, there's a legendary diner.
Oh, it looks delicious. Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Where the parking lot tells a story. A story as simple as biscuits and gravy.
The food is good. The prices are wonderful. My dad has so many friends here that come here, and it's my dad and mom have known Mary Jane and her dad before Duke.
Duke's Diner on 7th Avenue, home of legendary chili, holiday pies, and generations of local residents preparing tasty, hearty food for generations of local people. Join Mary Jane and her genial associates as they serve meals you'll come back for. Duke's Diner on 7th Avenue, Olivehurst.
In the heart of the valley, we rise so bright, where the news flows freely in the morning light. Yuba-Sutter.live, where truth comes alive. Every Tuesday's a journey, it's where we thrive. Watch it unfold. Yuba-Sutter.live, in the heart of our home. Be informed, be wise. Yuba-Sutter.live, we capture it all. Policy debates, hear the people's call. With Yuba-Sutter.live, you'll never miss a beat. Special reports hit hard, shining a spotlight. Yuba-Sutter.live. Yuba-Sutter.live.
Yuba-Sutter.live, it's the truth that comes through.